Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Seth Joyner Show. There is a lot to unpack with our Philadelphia Eagles this week. They go down to the Pittsburgh Steelers in a game that many will believe and think that, the Eagles had an opportunity to win. A lot of issues going on, from injuries to coaching questions, coaching decisions, not having enough playmakers at specific positions. And I can tell you today, watching, the press conference of Doug Peterson and Jim Schwartz, there's a lot going on with this football team right now. To help me do that, I want to bring in my colleague from WIP Sports Radio, Howard Eskin, a guy who's close to the organization, not only, from his affinity and love of the organization, but also he is a sideline reporter when they're sideline reporting in football. Obviously, right now during COVID, you're probably not doing much of that.
I'm a first row reporter. I'm the first row. At least they didn't put me up where Bob Uecker. Millennials don't know who Bob Uecker is, but at least they didn't put me up there in the last row.
Hey, listen, great news, in the state of Pennsylvania. Last week the Pittsburgh Steelers had some fans. This week, the Philadelphia Eagles are going to have the opportunity to bring 7,500 fans into the stadium. How much of a difference do you think that will make for the Philadelphia Eagles and the level of energy this week for this week's game?
You know what, Seth? When listening to the game, and obviously all NFL radio broadcasts are done from the home stadium, even when the team's on the road. But
Right.
We hear what's going on. I didn't hear much of the fans, and they had basically the same thing. It's such a, obviously stadiums are so big. They're there, but I don't know if they really affect either team that much. I mean, I think at first the players will be excited. They'll see some fans in the stands, but you know what home fans can do to an offense that's in the red zone. You can kind of really cause them to use hand signals, and you can't hear anything. But I don't think that changes anything. By the way, the cutouts are in the end zone. I don't know if they're going to change that. I don't think the cutouts make much noise, so they'll still leave the cutouts there. But I think the players at first will be excited to see fans, but it really comes down to the game. I remember the first home game that the Eagles played was against the Rams. They were in Washington the first week of the season. They played the Rams, and there's no fans. So I'm there, and there's nobody there. And after the first couple of series, I'm just watching a football game, and I hear a lot of what the players say. And I've been to some baseball games this year when the Phillies played with no fans. The only thing I noticed, when there's a foul ball, you hear it clank off the seat rather than a fan catching it. So, but you're really paying attention to the game. Right. So as far as the players, I don't think they'll know until they're there, but they'll be excited to see them at first. So when they come out, with the smoke and all the other nonsense going off, there'll probably be some excitement, and then they're going to just start playing a football game.
Well, I've said that all along. When football is a little different than basketball, baseball, from the standpoint that, you can have low energy if you want to, but the first time that you get hit in the mouth, there's no fans and no energy, that changes the dynamics of everything. Hey, listen, you guys are listening to the Seth Joyner Show. I want to give a plug to my first sponsor, Viget. You guys will see the commercial later on. Last week, when I tried to give them some props at the beginning of the show, we got cut off. The first minute or so of the show got cut off. I apologize to you guys who saw that or who got turned off and didn't watch the show last week because of that. But they're a sports betting social network app, and you guys will see more stuff on that, as the show progresses. Wow, there's so much.
Let me say this, Seth. That's one of the few times you ever apologized. So it's
that's not true. That's not true. Hey, listen, let's dive into it. Okay. So on Sunday, the biggest situation on Sunday was 3rd and 8. Yep. And there was some debate. I posted on Twitter that the Eagles were in cover 2, and how could they leave Nate Gary in that position? Some other people fired back, and all they're in cover 6, and sitting in front of my TV from home, I don't have the luxury of having the all 22 to be able to see the whole view and understand what they're in. After watching it, it's quite possible that they could have been in cover 6, but you really can't tell the way the two safeties are kind of lined up in halves coverage. But the gist of it all is the fact that whether it's cover 2 or cover 6, you still got Nate Gary in a less than enviable position against a guy who has torched you all day long, and there's no adjustment from the standpoint of a check out of that call, and there's also no timeout call. And now listen, in my opinion, there's plenty of time, and I watched Jim Schwartz's his press conference today and his comments about timeouts. That is the most critical time of the game, and Doug Peterson is connected, Howard, into every headset on that sideline. So the conversation could have been had about calling a timeout and getting in a more favorable defense that doesn't put Nate Gary in that situation. Whether they're playing cover 2 or cover 6.
It was cover 2. It was cover 2.
That number 2 receiver is Nate Gary's, that number 3 receiver, I should say, is Nate Gary's responsibility. And if it's cover 2, then Rodney McLeod made a huge mistake guessing that Ben was going to go to Juju Smith-Schuster instead of the guy that had been torching him all day and jumping off of that route, instead of helping the first and only vertical route in cover 2. That's part of his job.
And he kind of admitted that he probably should have given more help, and it's obvious that he should have given more help. And you're right. He worried about the other receiver rather than the guy, rather than Chase Claypool that was killing him all day. But it was cover 2, and it's a mismatch, and it's been the talk of talk radio. Of course, they beat a situation to death. And you could have called a timeout, and the Steelers may have changed that. From what Ben Roethlisberger said, and I heard him also after the game on Sunday, they don't run that play that much. It's an empty backfield, 5 wides, so now you got to pick your poison. And they could have talked about it, and Roethlisberger then may have gone the other way. It's just the Eagles they had the Eagles in a mismatch, and I don't care what you do. And I would be shocked if other teams don't start using that. And there's a problem with depth. Nate Gary's obviously not going to be able to cover him, especially by himself. They missed T.J. Edwards too. Everybody has injuries. I don't know that he could have covered him. I don't know that anybody else could have. But he needed help, and Rodney alluded to it a little bit on Sunday. Maybe I should have given him more help. So you're right there. He should have gotten help, but I don't know what you do with
Wait
a
minute. Wait a minute. I hope my producer is taping that. You said I'm right there.
Yeah, it's a rare.
No, go ahead.
I'm surprised you didn't say, why didn't you blitz? Why didn't you blitz?
Well,
you're a blitz happy guy.
No, I'm not. Listen, I am what I am, Howard, is I'm a guy that believes that, pressure has to be an integral part of what you do, that you can't sit back all the time and give up real estate and give up field position. And I just feel like, if you're a defensive coordinator with the mindset to be passive most of the time, and in my opinion, that's the way Jim Schwartz, coaches. There are times where he floors me with his level of aggression. And then there's other times he leaves me scratching my head at the passivity that he exhibits as a defensive coordinator. But, as well as I know that, pressure is every quarterback's kryptonite. It's an equalizer in the game. And you've got to bring it sometimes. And more importantly, when you're playing against young quarterbacks that haven't seen everything. Now, against Ben Roethlisberger, I get it, But at some point in time, as a defensive coordinator, you got to tell all your guys across the board, man up, we've got to do this. Defensive line, get there. Linebacker, get there from sending you. DB, get there from sending you. You've got to man up and drop them sometimes and go get people. But I'm not an advocate for always blitzing. But I see a guy like Jim Schwartz as being a passive defensive coordinator, and I believe that players always take on the mindset, the mood, and the personality of their defensive coordinators. And I think that's why we see our defensive backs at times play a very, very passive game.
Well, he's blitzed more, I think. I don't know the numbers. I believe he's blitzed more this year when he didn't have his full complement of defensive linemen. And now that you got Hargrave healthier because he didn't practice, he wasn't there all of camp, whatever camp there was. And then Barnett, up until last week, the San Francisco game, he really stepped it up. Right. And so you have more guys, you have more players that you can depend on with your front four, but he has blitzed more. But the one thing I think we should also mention on that play on the 3rd and 8 on the final touchdown for the Steelers is that Darius Clay left the series before. So now you have I don't even remember who was on the corner there. I know you had Mills on one side covering, I think, Juju, and then I forget who was on the other side, but you didn't have Darius Slay.
Probably Crevon LeBlanc.
Yeah, I was okay, LeBlanc. So, but you didn't have Slay, and Slay could have created a little bit more of a decision on Ben's part, and maybe Nate Gary would have gotten some help. So that doesn't help. You can't blame injuries for things that happen because this year everybody's got them. But the Eagles were it's a total mismatch on the way they lined up to defend that play. But, you can't let yourself get in that situation. And the reality is, and I'm not going to blame Jake Elliott because he's been terrific. He hits that 57-yarder, or they don't have 8 penalties on defense, and that really hurt them. They created some 3rd and longs, which became 3rd and shorts. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have those things, you may not be in a situation where that touchdown is the ultimate killer because you're still within a score to come back. But it doesn't matter. They didn't get it done. Too many penalties, and they didn't get a turnover. And when you don't get turnovers, this team's not going to win the game. And most teams are in a situation where you need turnovers to win games.
And let's stay on the defensive side of the ball and talk about some of these issues that the defense is facing, because you see you had Darius Slay that had 2 PI calls, you had Mills that had 1, you had Josh Sweat that jumped off sides one time, you had Fletcher Cox jumped off sides one time, and I forget who the other one. I believe it was. You have a roughing the passer by on
Malik Jackson, right? Was Malik Jackson?
No, Brandon Graham.
Brandon Graham. They said he grabbed the face mask, and Brandon we do a show at WIP with him on Monday night. He doesn't ever remember touching the face mask. Now, unfortunately, we didn't get a replay. Fox didn't have their top technical, and this year's changed a lot of things because you're not sending as many people. And you would think you would get a replay of that, but I didn't see it. He said he never touched the face mask.
Well, listen, it was amazing during the game because I was tweeting during the game and talking about that. I'm like, you've got an analyst that are making points, but you don't have the replays, there to back up what the analyst is saying. It doesn't make any sense. But nonetheless, you got all of these penalties, which to me, oftentimes penalties are a sign of a lack of discipline. Yep. Especially, jumping off sides. And then, you've got, just 5 of those penalties converted into first downs. And I think that Pittsburgh was like 10 of 15 on 3rd down conversions. And 5 of them came via, they didn't even have to earn them. They gave them to them. 5 of them came via penalty. And then at the other end of the spectrum, we're talking about their inability to turn the football over. They got some turnovers the last 2 games, but nothing this game. And we're -6 in the turnover department right now. And that's not emblematic of this defense. What is going on? Because what I know about, turnovers is something that you have to talk about all the time. Turnovers is something you have to practice, in practice. You got to be raking at the ball. You got to be punching at the ball. You got to be, your mindset has to be, I don't just want the sack. I want a strip sack. So when you're not creating them, that means that they're not top of mind, and they're not things that you're actually practicing when you're in practice.
Well, the only game they won the turnover battle was San Francisco. It was 3-1. And when you're +2, you win 65 to 70% of the time. You win when you're plus in the turnovers more than 50% of the time as well. But they got those 3 turnovers were created by pressure. One was a blitz. I know that's your favorite play. One was a blitz where LeBlanc came off the edge, and it was a strip sack because he was diving for the quarterback. I guess it was Mullins at the time, and his helmet hit the ball and it popped loose, fumble. 2 other pressures created really easy interceptions, and one went for the touchdown. So when you do that, you create pressure. Now, the quarterback wasn't that good, but you still have got to create pressure to help the back end. And if you don't do that, you're not going to help any back end. And the other thing, again, without TJ Edwards, and Will Parks, and I forgot about him until Brandon mentioned him last night. He didn't. He pulled a hamstring in camp. He would have been good on the back end too. So they miss having him out here. When he played in camp, and again, you're just looking at practice because there were no games, played really well. So he comes back maybe in a week or two, depending on how severe that hamstring was. But unless you get pressure, I don't think those guys are going to be able to do enough in the secondary right now to create turnovers. Strip sacks are an important thing. I'm trying to think of the teams where you played the Rams. The Rams just abused them. And then the Eagles turned it over and lost that 17-0 lead in the first game against Washington, which was a disgrace. That was just, I can't believe that even happened. But that's the problem. You've got to get turnovers, and you've got to create turnovers, whether it's a strip sack, whether it's pressure. But the pressures in the San Francisco game created the 3 turnovers.
Well, and I mean, that's why I'm much more of an advocate for bringing sometimes, even first down run blitz. The Eagles offensively are struggling on first down, but first down most of the time can be one of the most important downs, because if you give a team consistently 4 or 5 yards on first down, you make their ability to convert on third down so much easier. And I don't think that we're doing that well enough at this point in time defensively. We're always behind the 8 ball. There's tackling issues. The obvious issue is the linebacker play. And we talk about TJ Edwards. We talk about Nate Gary. The production just has not been there. And I believe in this world of meritocracy that we call football, it's time for Doug Peterson and Jim Schwartz to live with the fact that these young guys may get out there and make some mistakes, but you've got to open up the competition and see what you got in these other kids. You have to, because the production isn't there. Can they continue to play week after week after week, getting a lack of production out of that position? And how we talked about the resources that were, Jim talked about the resources that they believe were invested in the linebacker position. To me, that's a bunch of crap, because they haven't. They don't value the position, and if they do draft one, they don't develop them. You think about Michael Kendricks, never developed. Went to Seattle, had a hell of a year the 1 year he was there. Jordan Hicks, I get it. The guy was injured. You had to move on. You couldn't give him the type of money that Arizona was going to give him. But he goes to Arizona. He's playing lights out in Arizona right now. Rasul Douglas, no longer a Philadelphia Eagle, rated as one of the top cornerbacks in the NFL right now. Tell me, why is it that the Eagles have so many guys, LJ Ford, a guy that they're going to see next week, a toss away, and all of a sudden, he's a starter for the Baltimore Ravens defense? Why is it that we can't get our guys developed? And why can't we, invest resources in guys that are game changers? If you got to spend a second-round draft pick on a linebacker that is a for-sure shot guy, especially in a 4-2 scheme that teams are living in now, then you got to spend it. You can't think that you're going to get by just because you got a great defensive line with special teams linebackers and a project converted safety to linebacker. That's
Yeah.
something's got to change.
Well, that is a problem. I forgot. If they had another injury to the corner position on Sunday, I don't think they had anybody left because Avonte Maddox is still out too. So why don't they? That's an interesting question. Why don't they develop guys better? Sidney
Bruiser
Jones.
Hill.
Now, Sidney Jones was a second-round pick. If he wasn't injured coming out of the draft, they projected him as a top 10 to 12 pick. Sidney just wasn't tough enough. Now he had the closing speed was great, but he wasn't a tough guy. He didn't want to get up on people. Now I don't know whose fault that is. Now he had an interception for Jacksonville. I don't know how he's playing on Sunday, but he had an interception. Rasul Douglas, big guy, did at times did a nice job. I don't know why he wasn't developed. Remember, Corey Unlin was considered a good. Uh, he was a good coach, and then he was good enough to be taken by the Detroit, given a job with the Detroit Lions. So I don't know why they don't develop people. And I should say I don't know, but Avonte Maddox was a fourth-round pick. He turned into his first year, his rookie year. He really played well.
Mm-hmm.
Then he had some injuries last year, and he's got to step it up this year, and he got hurt again. So I don't know. I mean, Darius Slay was a good trade. He's a good player, and he likes to get up on people. As far as developing the other guys, I can't tell you. I can tell you why Sidney Jones didn't develop. He's not tough enough. Every little thing I got a hamstring. I got this. I got that. And he bailed out. When he got beat one time, he comes up. He starts holding his leg like he pulled a hamstring. So I start laughing. It's up. He got beat. I see he's coming out because he talks about this injury, and he's a good guy, and he's so fast. He's so athletically so good, but that's an internal problem in as far as he's concerned. Rasul Douglas will be interesting to see how he progresses and why he didn't develop here. But every team has those kind of players, and they went out and got some people. Will Parks was one of them. Roby Coleman. He's not played well at all. They went out and signed him too, and I don't know what his issue is. But they need, you're right, they need players on the back end to play better. And they only play with two linebackers most of the time. So absolutely. I kind of understand that. And I'm telling you, TJ Edwards was playing great, and then he pulls the hamstring. He's out for at least another couple of weeks. And they miss him too. So I don't know that he could have covered Chase Claypool on that play, but he's certainly better than Nate Gary.
Well, I'll say this because, when you look at the Philadelphia Eagles, we can't escape the fact that the players that are on this roster and the players that leave this roster are players that we either drafted or signed by GM Howie Roseman. Okay. So there has to be some accountability there as far as, who's brought in and how they're developed. And even to your point about Sidney Jones not being tough, okay? It's one thing to look at what the gurus are saying, that Sidney Jones is going to go in the top 10 before he tears his Achilles, in a pre-draft workout, okay? It's another thing to sit down and interview that kid and find out what his internal makeup is like. To me, that's a part of the entire job. Does he love football? Does he eat, sleep, and drink football? Is he tough? What does he look like, in the weight room when he's working out and nobody's watching him? All of those things, in my opinion, go into the job of being a GM to figure out how tough a player is, before you spend a second round draft pick on him. Because these draft picks like a Sidney Jones, J. Matt, these guys that are, you can't afford to miss. And I get it, teams do miss. But when you look at a team like the Baltimore Ravens, they got 8 first-round draft picks on their team right now that are starring, playing, getting it done, okay? The Philadelphia Eagles can ill afford, to miss out on draft picks and make bad evaluations as far as these players are concerned because it has reverberations for years down the road.
Yeah, it was they drafted the positions they needed this last draft, but we don't know that they're good enough. I drafted an offensive lineman in Driscoll. He had to come in when Lane was out. he wasn't good enough. Obviously, he wasn't good enough. And you don't know. Again, he hasn't played that much, and with no
Right.
camp, he's played even less. Uh, I'm, you try to think of some of the players they drafted. Matter of fact, they drafted a player that can be a linebacker. Darn, if I forget his name. He's not. He doesn't. I don't think he even dresses. I forget his name, but they drafted him in like the third or fourth round, and he's
Davion
not
Taylor.
even. What's that?
Davion Taylor.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but
We're
that's
getting
what I'm
on the
talking
field,
about.
so I don't even know if he's a linebacker. Yeah, it's just
Well, what they like,
so
he
they've got to do better. They've got to do better.
he fell into, the mandate of Howie, going into the offseason and the draft, okay, was to get faster, to make sure that you draft and sign healthy players, and players that love football. That was his mandate. So, you go and you draft a player like, Davion Taylor. If you do the homework on him and you know that, this guy was a late bloomer, he played well at Colorado, but he was a late bloomer when he was in high school. He practiced during the week, but he couldn't play the games on Saturday because, he was a Jehovah's Witness and they couldn't play football on Saturday. So to me, that's another project situation where you find yourself, you fall in love with a guy's metrics and not necessarily with what you see on tape and what your eyes are telling you that are probably going to happen. A
They
kid that I
fall in
like,
love with the numbers. You're right.
yeah,
They fall in love with the numbers, and he had uh, really good speed for a player his size. It doesn't matter if you can't play and you don't have the heart, or you don't have whatever it takes. Heart's one of the things, and you don't have the desire, which is part of heart. Then it's not going to work. But too many teams get caught up in the numbers, and you're right there. And teams make mistakes because they draft numbers. I mean, every team does it, and the Eagles have had many of those. Mike Mamula, who's a terrific guy, but they drafted him because of what he did at the combine, and they let Warren Sapp pass on by a Hall of Famer.
mm-hmm.
So, but that was years ago. But I can't ever forget. I forget. And Warren Sapp reminds me of that all the time when I see him, all the time.
Listen, there's no doubt about it. There's a linebacker on the roster that, in my opinion, he needs to get a legitimate look. I'm talking about Sean Bradley out of Temple.
Yep, Temple.
I coached a kid at the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl last year before the draft, and I'm telling you right now, he's got dog in him. He's got animal in him. I don't know whether he's not picking up the defense or what the circumstances are, but if you need an attitude adjuster, that kid will come in and hit you. I don't know if you saw that play on the goal line last week where he was in
Yep.
and stepped up. I mean, we haven't seen a linebacker feel like that in a long time. So my thing is, if you're,
That's all right. I'm sorry. I
so
was going to
if you,
say he only got 2 snaps, and obviously he's going to get more this week.
well, listen, I hope so. I hope so because
Yeah.
what they do need is they do need someone, that will step up, that has some fire. Listen, I'm getting a lot of questions from our viewers, and they're asking about Malcolm Jenkins and how much are the Eagles actually missing, and I know he hasn't been what he was down in New Orleans. We've been watching. I think we all know, but I think Malcolm meant more in a different type of way than just the production. You're talking about leadership. You're talking about the versatility. You're talking about that guy that could be a tone setter. Do they miss a guy like that, or do they have enough on this roster right now to fill in for what they've lost in him?
Well, here's what I'll say about Malcolm Jenkins. He was slow. He got slow. When you'd find tight ends go in motion, backs go in motion, knowing that Malcolm was the guy that's going to, the player that had to pick him up and play him, and he got abused. You see, the New Orleans defense is getting abused. Now, and you would know, you're in the locker room. I talk to the players. I don't think you can be a leader unless you do it on the field. You can't tell a player you need to do this if you get your ass beat. And he got beat a lot of times in the last year he was here. And he wanted to get paid a lot more than he ended up getting paid. the Eagles would have paid him the same thing, but not as many years. Now, as far as leadership, I don't know if you're a leader if you're not getting the job done on the field. The quality he has, he plays every snap, he plays hard every snap, but he got slower, and it happens. You know, nobody beats Father Time.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody beats Father Time, and that's where people complain. Oh, with Malcolm Jenkins, he would have been getting torched too. He couldn't have covered Chase Claypool. I don't care if you put him on him and move Nate Gary somewhere else, and that would not have been the case. But he's getting beat like a drum in New Orleans. But people like him. He's vocal, but does it mean anything unless you're playing well on the field? And I say no. And there's a lot of players internally I've heard, they don't miss him. They just miss playing well. They have people in there that have stepped up, but you got to play. You got to make plays. And you can talk all you want, and you can try to create a bond and a leadership. But if you don't do it on the field, it doesn't make any difference. And Malcolm Jenkins was losing it. It's amazing. The Eagles won the Super Bowl, which is amazing anyway. It was one of the greatest experiences of my life in 2017. Being on the sidelines for a Super Bowl win, it was great. And I've covered everything. But to be there, it was amazing. But they got abused defensively, abused. And Malcolm got abused. If it wasn't for Nick Foles, and we're going to hear the Nick Foles because he won a game. They should have kept Nick Foles and not Carson Wentz. So it happens. It happens with players. But to answer your question, and I did it in a very long way, extended way, I don't think they miss Malcolm Jenkins. I really don't. That's not the problem. Malcolm being in there is not the problem.
All right. Hey guys, you listen to the Seth Joyner Show. My guest today is WIP's Howard Eskin. We'll be back after this break. Viget, the sports betting social network app. Available on Google Play and the Apple App Store. Make picks, share betting tips, win prizes, and much more for free. Right from your smartphone or tablet. Use promo code BETWITHSETH to get 1,000 Viget coins when you sign up. Download the Viget app now and follow me, Seth Joyner, to see my picks. Think you can beat me? Then put your Viget coins where your mouth is and send me your picks on Viget, the sports betting social network app. Welcome back, guys. This is the Seth Joyner Show. My special guest, Howard Eskin. Howard, let's jump over to the offensive side of the ball. You know, a lot of people have asked me, the last couple of days, do you see positive strides by Carson Wentz? After the San Francisco game, it looked like, he took some really great strides. Seems like he's got a great connection with Travis Fulgham and not so much with Zach Ertz right now. Tell me what you're seeing out of Carson Wentz, rather, and whether he's progressing in the proper manner, in your opinion. Looks like Howard is frozen. All right. Well, I guess you know what? We'll take a little bit of time. I'm sure he'll get it straightened out. Let's take a little bit of time, and I will. Oh, there you are. Okay. So I was saying when we came out of break, let's jump over on the offensive side of the ball, and talk about Carson Wentz and what you're seeing out of him. In my opinion, the San Francisco game was a major shift for him. Came out and played decent last week. But he's still struggling with Zach Ertz, and that's a concern. They seem like they have no chemistry, no rhythm together. But this kid, Travis Fulgham, has just, come out of nowhere and just turned into the most prolific weapon that they've had in a long time. And I tell you what I really like about him. I get how he likes speed, but sometimes speed comes with these little wide receivers, these little packages, to get injured, to get beat up, that can't get off of jams and things of that nature. What I see in Travis Fulgham is a guy who's got decent speed. I'm not sure what he runs the 40 in, but I see a guy that catches the ball with his hands, not his body. I see a guy who can elevate and go get the ball, who can track the ball, who can reposition his body on the go, and a guy who is he's a big body, and DBs that come up to try to cut his legs off from under him. It just doesn't work. And I think he's going to create some problems decision-wise when, Deshaun and Alshon are healthy and can play. He's going to create some problems, for them as to who they play and who they don't play. But give me your assessment on Carson Wentz and where he is, and if he's on the uptick or whether he leveled back out after last week, and this Travis Fulgham kid, because I really like what I see out of him. A lot of people want to know, can he sustain it? I say yes.
Yeah, what he does, Greg Ward catches everything thrown to him, but he doesn't have a lot of speed. But he's a solid guy, and he will catch everything. Travis Fulgham has speed, and he catches. I mean, the way the balls are thrown, that catch against San Francisco, you're right about tracking the ball. The best player I've seen to track a ball in Philadelphia was Deshaun Jackson. Tracks the ball as well or better than anybody. Now, you don't have, and I don't know that you're going to have much of Deshaun the rest of the year. That hamstring just keeps on coming back, and I can't depend on him right now. Travis Fulgham is unbelievable. He goes up and catches the ball. He catches the ball in traffic. He does everything well. I don't even know how he was out there, but you can't.
Howard, you keep freezing on me, man. What's going on with your internet wherever you are? A lot of good questions, guys. We'll take some of these questions until we get them back,
There you go.
Okay.
You got me now?
Did you pay your internet bill, man, or what?
Yeah, I'm paying it. I mean, it's just I got nothing but top-notch things. I guess I got to put another quarter in the meter. But Travis Fulgham he's got to play. He's got to dress, and he's got to play. I wouldn't be upset if they had Rager. Remember Rager, the first-round draft pick, who's got speed. Haven't seen enough of him, but in camp he looked good. I don't know how many more weeks he's got, but you have the speed on both sides. I would have no problem with those guys, and then you can move some of them in the slot. But when Rager comes back, I think it creates something. I don't know what Alshon's going to be. Coming back from a Liz Frank injury is a tough thing. So does he have what he had before? He's not 2017 Alshon Jeffrey, right, but he could add something. So if you get Rager back, you're okay. Again, I don't know how long Deshaun's going to play, but as far as Carson Wentz, he got better in the Pittsburgh game. Now you see the numbers and you'll see 2 interceptions. One of them was a Hail Mary at the end of the game, which Pittsburgh should have never even caught because it was 4th down anyway. It was better than a punt. And the other one, Zach Ertz was taken off his route and Carson threw to the spot that he should have been there. That wasn't really, and Tony Dungy even said it Sunday night. That was not Carson's fault. And when I saw this, that wasn't Carson's fault. Now, what's happened with Zach Ertz? I can't tell you. People say, well, he wanted a new contract. I don't think when you get on the field, he's thinking about his contract. He's thinking about getting some catches to force them to say, hey, listen, I'm good enough. He's got 2 years left. I don't know what they're going to do and how it's going to work out. And depending on where they are, I wouldn't be shocked if they trade him at the deadline because you still got time. But I don't think you're going to be able to tell that you're out of it at the deadline because the division is so brutal. So I don't know what's wrong with Zach. I don't know if he's lost a step. If, the Eagles and Doug Peterson says, well, they put a lot of times their best defender on him. I don't think you have to do that anymore either. It's really hard to say other than he's not getting open. And what's the reason he's not getting open? Is he lost a step? Is he I can't. Is he not tough enough to fight off some of the people? I don't know what it is, but it's clear he's not the same player right now than he's been in the past for the Philadelphia Eagles, and they really do need him. What may hurt right now is they don't have Dallas Goedert, so you don't have somebody to suck some of that coverage off him, and they love that 2 tight end offense, but you're not going to worry about Richard Rodgers compared to Dallas Goedert. So maybe that. If you're looking for a reason, maybe that's a little part of it. But Zach's got to be better at what he's doing as well.
Couple of observations. When guys are in the same system and the production isn't there, you tend to look at, schematically what they're doing. Now, the Eagles love this formation where they'll put Zach on the weak side and they'll flex him out a little bit. And then they go three receivers away from him. Well, what teams normally do is the cornerbacks normally travel in flop situations with the wide receivers. So you got three wide receivers over here in the tight end. Why would you waste, a cornerback, a number 1 or 2 cornerback on a tight end? Well, he's drawing that coverage because, schematically, that's the position that they're putting him in, and he's not winning. Okay, you see Travis Kelce run the same thing. Andy Reid does has that same formation in Kansas City, and Travis Kelce is killing whoever that DB is over there, whether he's the number 2 corner or whether he's a safety over there, he's still getting it done. So you look at schematically and you ask yourself, are they doing anything different? The other thing is, Doug Peterson in his press conference was talking about Travis Fulgham and how, him and Carson works together, in between periods, to work on their timing and so on and so forth. My goodness, why in the world, isn't Zach Ertz and Carson Wentz doing that? Because obviously, Fulgham is important, but Zach Ertz is even that much important. And I would say to you, that at the end of the day, you brought up the option moving forward to move Zach Ertz. What could his value be at this point in time? I mean, when you have a guy like, obviously they want to be able to run that 12 personnel, okay? And it requires 2 good tight ends. But the truth is, Zach Ertz has never wanted to block anybody. Dallas Goedert will block and get down the field and catch the ball. Maybe it's time to move on rather than paying him the 14, 15, 16 million dollars that he wants to be paid like Kelce and Kittle. Maybe it's time to move on and say, hey, we'll just draft or develop another guy that can move in and be that guy who also can block and catch the ball. I mean, he's making himself expendable, but less valuable by the way he's playing at this point in time.
Well, I don't think there's any way. If his agent was asking for Travis Kelce or Kittle type money, then they were in a dreamland. But I think he wanted more guaranteed money, whatever he wanted. He's not Kelce, and he's not Kittle's, so we know that, and he's got to do a better job. And I don't know if there's times that, with what they have, until you get the wide receivers, and now Fulgham's going to create. Maybe we'll see what happens this week. You're playing against a really good defensive team, so I don't know that you're going to see it this week. You might see it. The game after that is a Thursday night game against the Giants, which then they can abuse them a little bit. They better abuse them a little bit, or they're really in trouble. But I don't know that you're going to do it against the Ravens until Goddard comes back. But Fulgham might take some of that pressure off him. And then Rager, when he comes back, might take a little bit more off him. But Zach has certainly got to do. He's got to do a better job. But he's done very limited. He's done well, but it's been very, very limited. And you can't have that if this team's going to be successful. Especially, you're right. By the way, I like to use 12 personnel.
Right, and but I'm looking at the wide receiver production, and Fulgham is the guy that just jumps out at you. Why have the Eagles struggled so mightily, with getting production out of their wide receivers when you look at other wide receivers around the league just exploding? It's not that, a lot of the guys that they've drafted and a lot of the guys they had on this roster don't have the ability. When I watch the Eagles run routes during games, it's not very precise. And one thing you see with Travis Fulgham, and when I talk about being able to develop, for a lot of guys that come into the NFL, they've either had that development at the previous level, meaning the college and the high school levels, or they come in and they have a coach who understands the importance of basic fundamentals and techniques that get them and coach them up to where they need to be. Route running has been a problem, for the Eagles. I don't see stems at the top of the routes, they seem to just run routes and defenders run the routes for them. the development just isn't there. I mean, I believe the Eagles have been through 3 different wide receivers coaches since Doug Peterson has been the head coach. They started off with Greg Lewis. 1 year, boom, he's gone. They bring in the next guy. He's been here for a while. This year they bring in Aaron Moorhead. Why is it that we can't get our wide receivers to run the proper type of routes with the proper type of techniques that allows them to create the pressure? Because Carson's sitting there waiting sometimes. And we're like, just throw it away, just throw it away. But he knows that those routes have the potential to get open. But you got to set defenders up in order to create space and get open. And I just don't see our wide receivers do that.
No, and I think there's times when Carson should throw it away, but it's a fine line to try to extend the play because he knows that one of these guys should be getting open, and sometimes he just holds the ball too long because what's happening on the other side when guys aren't getting open. But let me go back to the wide receivers. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside can't play. I mean, do you know Fulgham has right now is 1 catch less than J.J. Arcega-Whiteside has had in his career last year and this year. And then when he runs a route that's a good route, it's like it's a surprise. That's why Carson, I think, hesitates to throw to him. Now, right before the end of the half, I mean, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside caught a ball. He was wide open. And then he starts celebrating when the clock's running. Come on, man. I don't know if they would have gotten the playoff anyway, but he's got no speed. He was supposed to be a guy that could catch the jump balls and would be great in the red zone. But I don't think Carson trusts him to do the right thing when he's running a route or trying to get open. So that's one guy. If he's here next year, I would be surprised. Maybe because he's a second-round pick, he'll stay here, but he's just not good enough. All right, and then you had a Hightower this year who's got speed, looks like he's got a chance, but he doesn't track the ball. You could see on that play, I forget what was it in the second quarter when the deep ball into the back of the end zone. Now, Woody, I think a good receiver, and he's a rookie, would have come down in bounds if he caught the ball. And that's a big play. That's a really big play. But he doesn't track the ball as well. And maybe that takes time with a wide receiver, but he certainly does have speed. But after that, you had Rager, who's not playing. So you don't really have a lot. That's why Fulgham stepping up really was a godsend that this guy was even there and he's going to play. And then they're missing some people, but I don't know whether it's the coaches or it's just the player. Sometimes a coach can coach you up and the player just doesn't do it. And I don't think Carson has trust in J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, but it looked like he had more. He's starting to get trust in Hightower. So let's see if Hightower, again, they're playing such a good defensive team this week, that could be a problem. But see what the more trust he has in Hightower before Rager comes back and before Deshaun comes back or Alshon comes back. So injury should never be an excuse. But coaches can only do what the players. You tell a guy to do something and you tell a guy to do something and he doesn't do it. It's like people in Philadelphia always complain that Andy Reid was bad at time management. Well, when guys are in the wrong formation, you coach them to be in the right formation, and players in the wrong and being on the sidelines, you see it as a player and you're running down, you see something's wrong. So you call a timeout, or you see a defense like people complained that Doug Peterson called a timeout. It was near the end of one of the quarters, I guess. He called a timeout because he saw the play that he called wasn't right for the defense. They had a defense in there that he didn't feel the play was going to be successful. So I'm okay with those kind of things. But the players have to be able to play. And if the players don't do what they're coached up to do, I don't know that you could always blame the coach. Now, some coaches are just flat out dopes. But so you blame them, and the players are never going to learn from them. But some players you can coach them all you want, and they still don't do the right thing. And at that point, you got to cut your losses eventually at that time. But you just hope the players eventually, the light goes off, and they start doing the things that the coach wants them to do. So I don't know that it's always the players or always the coach. I think the players have to really take responsibility as well.
So that a good lead up to that then would be, has free agency and the salary cap hurt football from the standpoint that, because I can remember, as a player, if you asked the guy to do something and he, repeatedly and he didn't do it, they just cut you. Okay. I mean, Buddy was notorious for that. But let me tell you something. When I played in Green Bay for Mike Holmgren, and when I played in Denver, won a Super Bowl with the Broncos, for Mike Shanahan, it was understood that there's a certain level that we play at, and there's a certain expectation, and there's a certain level at which you perform your job at. And we're not going to cattle prod you. We're not going to tell you 15 times. That's just the way it is. And if you don't want to live up to that level, guess what we do? We get your ass out of here, and we find somebody who will do the things that we ask you to do. Now, the salary cap doesn't allow you to really operate under those auspices any that much anymore.
Right.
But sometimes what you really need is, you need to cut a guy. You need to cut a guy who everyone thinks is going to be there to send a message to the team that if you don't get your act together, your ass is going to be out of here next.
Well, the problem now with the Eagles is they don't have enough players to be able to cut him. But I don't disagree with you for a change. I don't disagree with you that there's got to be a time if the guy's not good enough, just get him out of here. But right now they don't have enough players because of injuries. This is a weird season. Now, is that because of free agency? If the guy's not making not heavy on the cap, they would have moved on from Alshon Jeffrey. But the way they restructured his contract, he had too much money sitting on the cap this year. And then you can't get rid of, well, you could have worked out a settlement, but the injury thing kind of changed things a little bit because he just wasn't the same player for whatever reasons. And this will be the last year that he'll be here. But you got to have the players to replace the players that you cut. But I have no problem. With moving on from somebody if he's just not going to do it. And there's a point where you've got to do that with some players. And I think the Eagles have done it, but they haven't done that much of it because some of these players are under contract and you can't do it without really screwing up your cap. Is it free agency? It's the cap. Well, you got to do a better job evaluating players before you give them those kind of contracts as well. And if you give draft picks that money, but after a while if they're not good enough, you got to move on. I mean, they moved on from Sidney Jones. They moved on. Rasul Douglas was here at, I think, a year more than Sidney Jones. And for whatever reason, and I understand Sidney. I really do understand Sidney because he always came up hurt when he got beat. So, okay, it's enough already, and you got to move on. But cutting a guy and showing people that this is what's going to happen if you don't get it done, I have no problem with whatsoever. So
let's fast forward and talk about, Miles Sanders and this offensive line.
That's good.
I tell you, I get it that, we've got injuries across the board on the offensive line. We got 2 starters on injured reserve. Jason Peters hurt again. Lane Johnson, is ailing. And to be honest with you, I thought the offensive line was somewhat of a bright spot last week, to be honest with you. I thought they played really good the last 2 weeks.
2 weeks, right.
So you come in against Pittsburgh, they're the number 3 run defense in the league, okay? Miles Sanders rips off a 74-yarder, and then he only touches the ball 10 more times the rest of the game. And I get it, he's only averaging a yard, 2 yards a carry, but that's going to happen. But how do you get away from that? How do you get a kid with that kind of talent and that ability that only touches the ball 11 times in that football game? In my opinion, that can't happen. You have to give that offensive line an opportunity to get established because whoever wins in the trenches, that's where you're going to win the game. But when you don't run it enough, in my opinion, and I get it, it's we want to, tee it up, let it fly, and all the flash and dash and, throw it 20, 30, 40 plus yards down the field. But when I look at good offenses, Howard, what they do is they take what the defense gives. They try to establish the running game. They try to establish the line of scrimmage. And then passing wise, they're going to take what the defense gives them until they get a lead and they put the defense in a position to do something that they really don't want to do, like blitz. And then when they understand that they've got one-on-one, then they take their shots down the field. You know, with Doug, the running game always seems like an afterthought, and they're always trying to push the ball down the field before they've established that they can push it down the field.
Well, in the San Francisco game, they did run the ball because Carson didn't throw that many passes. They did, and they had success. They had success.
28 passes and 28 runs. They were balanced.
Yeah. Okay. In the Pittsburgh game, I don't know the number early, but I think they had a lot of. They tried to run it a lot early. Other than that, remember that 74-yard run was on a 2nd and 9. Mm-hmm. Was the 2nd and long, and you're not going to be good enough to be able, when you're in 2nd and long and 3rd and long, to be able to run the football. And when they ran it on 1st down, they didn't really get that much. And I'm trying to remember how many times, and I don't have numbers.
Oh, I got it. I got it. I can tell you they threw it 36 times. Carson was 21 for 36, and he only ran it 16 total times. Bart Scott got one rush. Carson Wentz had 4 rushes, which, you know, in all probability, they were probably scrambles, so they really weren't called
right. Okay, but my point is, in the first couple of series, how many times did they try to run the ball and weren't successful? Now they got one good run on that 74-yarder. That was early in the game. But after that, how many times did they try to run on 1st or 2nd down and didn't have success? And they had to get away from it because now they're in 3rd and long.
But hold on, Howard. I would say this: you can't get away from it just because you don't have success. You know, you can't do that. I understand that, you know, you're not gaining yards, but you can't get away from it and say to your offense and your offensive line, "Hey, we can't run the ball." Now you're succumbing to what the defense wants you to do. They want you to become one-dimensional, and you make yourself one-dimensional, which makes it easier for them as a defense to play. So you can't just give up on it because you're having issues and you're not gaining yards. Sometimes you just got to keep knocking. Sooner or later, the door jumps open, just like on the 74-yard touchdown.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with that. And they certainly should have had more than 11 carries. But I like to get the ball in his hands too. And I think they tried that, and that didn't work out that well. I don't know how many targets he had on Sunday. But to get him the ball in open space, he's phenomenal. And I think they tried to do that a few times, and it didn't work, whether it was a bad pass or whether Pittsburgh was right there with them to stop the play. You have to run more than 11 times. I don't disagree with that. But I like to see him catch more passes in open space because he can do a lot with that football. He is a really good player. That's a draft pick that was a good one, and he's going to be a good one for a while. He's a good guy, and he plays hard, and he's tough, and he's a really good player, player.
To your point, Howard, he was targeted 4 times, and he had 2 receptions for 19 yards. And I agree. I think that he is a fully complementable back, meaning that he's good in pass protection, that he can run the ball in between the tackles, he can run it outside, and he is a weapon in the passing game. And, you know, the one thing I don't see the chemistry, just like I don't see the chemistry between Carson and Zach Ertz. I don't see the chemistry between he and Carson Wentz in the passing game. I mean, how many times do you see him running an out route and he's got the guy beat by 2 steps, and Carson either throws it behind him or he throws it, you know, too far in front of him, or he runs an angle route, you know, like on Sunday. He ran an angle route, a route that I've been calling for the last 3 weeks, because most of his routes are either swing routes or flat routes. But if you got a linebacker on him one-on-one and you act like you're going to run it out and you break that angle route inside, more times than not in man-to-man situations, that's going to be a major play. Carson missed him on that play. I mean, I don't understand, you know, you're practicing every week. Why don't we have some continuity for the guys, for the real playmakers on this team. It seems like he has more continuity with a guy that they just pulled up off the practice squad than he does with guys he's been playing for multiple years with.
I don't want to give Carson an excuse, and he shouldn't need one, but he's got to get better. There's no question he's got to get better. But Sanders, excuse me, Sanders, I'm all choked up talking about Miles Sanders. Sanders didn't have, I don't think he had any camp. And then he sat out, I forget which week it was, with a glute injury. And was that before the San Francisco game? So they haven't had, when you consider the lack of camp, the lack of the camp that they did have that Miles Sanders was out there, there's something to the fact they got to be more in sync, and there's more work that they need. But, you know, in practice, you don't go back to the play constantly just to make sure that he's getting the work. It's in the plays that you're only allowed to practice. So that's another problem. You're only allowed to practice so much time, so you can't start going back to plays and start working on them because they didn't work in practice. But they've got to have more practice time and do that. And Carson's got to get better. There's no question when it comes to Miles Sanders. They've got to get more on the same page. I'll give you an example. Players that, when they don't have practice time, that played the Philly special, the Eagles ran in the Super Bowl, which, by the way, the Cowboys stole. It's not, forget it. They stole something from Philadelphia, the Cowboys. But that play was not run in practice the week of practice at the Super Bowl. The last time they ran that play in practice was before the Minnesota game, which was the NFC Championship game. Mm-hmm. And it didn't work, and they didn't run it again. Trey Burton did not throw a good pass. But you can't go back to it. But Doug trusted him. But again, my point is not whether he trusted him or not, is you can't keep on running. And the reason they didn't run it in practice the Super Bowl, he thought Belichick in some way was going to be taping practice or had somebody watching, because Belichick does that all the time anyway. He's cheating all the time. So they used it in a walkthrough in a ballroom in the hotel the day before the game. But again, the point is you can't keep on going back to plays if they don't work, because you don't have enough time, because you got to have practices within a certain period of time. And that's part of the issue, but it's no excuse. Carson has got to get better with his connections with Miles Sanders, without question.
I will say this in closing, if it matters to you, then you'll do whatever's necessary to get it right, and as players, if you've got to spend extra time out on the field after practice, if you got to spend extra time, out on the field before practice, then you got to do whatever is necessary. Listen, it's your job. Your window of opportunity is so minuscule. I played for 13 years, Howard. It seemed like it was 5 years. That's how fast it seemed to go. And what these guys don't understand is that, you work July, August, September, November, and December. And if you're lucky, you get to work into January, So if you can't commit the time during the year and the effort and the sacrifice to, honing your craft and doing what's necessary, then something's really wrong, because you're getting paid a hell of a lot, a king's ransom, to play a game. But it's your livelihood. It's your job. If it matters, then you'll do what's necessary to get better. I don't know. I'm not there. I'm not around practice to see, what's going on and what these guys do and what they don't do. I just know that I was around a lot of great players in my career. And if they couldn't get something right during the allotted practice time, guess what they do? They show up early before practice and they put the work in, or they stay late after practice and put the work in. What the hell do you have to do after practice but take a shower, get a Gatorade, watch film, and go home? Come on.
Well, they have to spend more. That's a good point after practice. They should spend more time after practice, but they do have meetings, and that's no excuse. So skip lunch. The hell with lunch. The hell with the free time you have. You've got to. You got to do more of that after practice. You can't do it before practice, but after practice, he and Miles Sanders should probably spend more time out there, like he and Fulgham. Carson has no problem going out there after practice and working with these guys. None whatsoever. And the other guys got to want to do it too. And I don't think Miles Sanders would complain if he was out there. If Carson said, hey, Miles, let's get out there and let's work on this a little bit. I don't think he would have a problem with it. Right now, he's working with Fulgham, and it's probably not a bad point. They got to do it after practice to get on the same page. And Carson's got to work on ways to find ways to get him the football. I don't care how it is; he's got to get him the football. He on your team is the best offensive player on your team.
Right.
Not even a question. Not even a question.
Well, my friend, it's been an hour, and I haven't had to reach through the screen and choke you yet. So that's been pretty. That's been pretty darn good.
I want to choke you.
Listen, I tell my guests every week, you know, our most valuable commodity is our time. And listen, I appreciate your insight. I appreciate your time. Thank you for spending the last hour and 5 minutes on the Seth Joyner Show. We thank you.
And I appreciate it, Seth. And I'm glad we didn't fight during this time or didn't argue during this time. But don't let it stop us from doing it in the future. And to show you that I'm going to work after practice, I was walking 17, 18 miles a day. I walk 14 to 16 now, and I'm a little short. So now, you know, it's nighttime here on the East Coast. I'm going out to walk.
Hey, go do it. I'm going to get me a workout out in before I catch this red eye out of LA to Philadelphia tonight.
Okay.
All right, guys. That's
right,
our show. And I'm sure at some point in time we'll disagree about something, and you know,
I hope so.
It'll be all over the place, no doubt about it. Well, that's our show, guys. Thanks for watching again. I appreciate the support. I want to thank my sponsor, Viget, for being our title sponsor of the show today. My producer, Tom Schrader, my other producer, Derek Stevenson, is out today. Hey, listen, I always say it. You guys take care of each other. Be good to each other. Most importantly, love each other. Peace. I'll see you guys next week.